Something you might not realize is that a lack of planning is killing your growth. It doesn't matter what subject or project you're working on, it's still the most important part and the backbone of actually like completing whatever you're trying to create or learn. Now, I do think that it's important to actually get started, to not plan like an extreme amount, not to learn every single part of what you're trying to accomplish with the end goal, because at the start you're just trying to get into it, just trying to learn what the skill or thing really is. So I think at the start it's not an extremely important thing to really plan out every second of what you're trying to learn or build. But I think later on, if you want to actually complete whatever goal you're setting for yourself, you have to plan, at least in some sense. So, what most people do when they start something, they start real quick and they have this big idea of, I'm gonna build this thing or I'm going to learn this thing, and that's their goal, that's their end goal. But what they don't realize is that there's a lot of steps in between them and that goal. I was talking about in a previous video about New Year's resolutions and how they fail because they're just way too big of goals. So you got to take steps in between to do that. Because what'll happen is something that I found out myself when I began coding. I found that there's a lot of small things like finding what code editor to use, like a free one or a paid one, and when I started coding, I had a school laptop, so I wasn't actually able to even start coding because the school laptop was had websites blocked and downloading blocked, so I wasn't able to actually do any coding for months until I got my own computer. So that was a big issue for me because I wanted to code. So you can see how like planning is really important, because a lot of times you lose a lot more than just like a couple months, like a little bit of time. A lot of times you lose like more than that, like money or like years of time. Like, for example, you might not even be able to finish what you're wanting to do, such as if you wanted to be like an airline pilot or something, or maybe not just an airline pilot, maybe you want to be like a personal pilot, like you want to get your own plane and stuff. But the problem is, like, you have to go to college for years, probably. You have to get like licenses, and you have to get your own plane if you want to be a personal pilot or whatever. And all these things just like add up, like time and money, and you probably won't even be able to finish it if you didn't plan that out in the beforehand. So you can see how like it's really important to plan out at least some of what your goal really is so that you can complete it. So the way to do this really is just like cut it into small steps, because when you're planning, you just kind of like, you don't know where to start. So the place where you start is just like, what's the first step, and then what's the last step? Like what's the biggest step you can take, and then you cut that down into the smallest steps that you can take. So you go from, for example, a YouTube channel like I'm making here, because I've started pretty recently. So I think my journey on YouTube is pretty good example of planning and cutting it down into smaller steps. So number one, you might see like the start of YouTube, just making your first video, versus becoming a 1 million subscriber YouTube channel or some like giant YouTube channel. You see that as the biggest step, but then you can cut that down into just writing the script for the first video, and then you can cut that down even farther into writing just like the hook, let's say, and then you add on another step after that, like make the title or make the thumbnail, or just upload the video. And then you just keep adding on until you finally have the first video. And then you keep doing that for each video after. And then you just eventually, after a good amount of time and a lot of iteration, you eventually, the plan leads to the goal, the completion of what you're trying to do. The thing is though, planning isn't like only good for figuring out these small steps. It also like tells you about some important other pieces to whatever you're trying to do. Like, it tells you the complexity. If you have like an insane amount of small parts, then it's like how much are you going to be able to balance all of these small pieces into a coherent like direction that you're trying to go in to reach your goal. Like, is it even going to be possible? Like the airline pilot example I talked about earlier, it might not be possible. So then there's other things that planning can be good for, such as choosing the order of which you do things. Like, I've been making websites in the last few months, and I found that it's been pretty useful to kind of plan out the websites and go like step by step into uh, what I'm doing, because what I can do is I can look at like what are all the steps and then what order do I do them in. Like, do I start with buying a domain name, like to get a domain name on the internet? I probably wouldn't do that, so I'd put that like at the end, right? So then you put like, say something like just starting the project and like getting the coding editor set up. That'd be like number one. So then you can like order these, and then these things can even be good for automation, right? So like my first step will be like automated, and I will be able to like cut the first three steps out because I already set up a previous project in the exact same way. So I just copy and paste. So then I'm able to easily get started on this next project versus how long it took in the last project. So planning really cuts down on the amount of time it takes to do a new project versus an old project, and it also just tells you if you even can do the projects. This way of thinking, though, like this planning way of thinking, is not meant to like stifle your creativity and like your goals in general. It's really just to focus on the details. That's all it is. It's just like focusing on the details that are important right now and being able to figure out what the end goal of the project really is, what direction you want to go in to reach that end goal in the fastest way possible. That's really all it is. Just like plan for what direction you want to go, and that's basically it. Comment below your thoughts on planning, and that's about it. Bye.